So as food production continues to rise across the globe, agriculture companies continue to find efficient ways to raise yields and decrease operating costs, including seeking new methods. And these are some of the most productive ag lands, but not enough. We don't know enough about desert ag soils. So we need to have strong relationships with our industry. So I've invited some industry stakeholders to help discuss some of the needs of the desert ag industry. And we have three great panelists today. We have Vicki Scott, Kim Horton, and Matt McGuire. And I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves further.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vicki Scott. I have a private consulting business that deals mainly with water and food safety issues. In my first career, I worked for the water and wastewater industry in treatment and laboratory compliance. My second career was for a local grower as their food safety manager or food safety professional, as we like to call them now. I spent a few years working as the Arizona LGMA technical consultant. Now I'm totally on my own with private consulting. Very happy to be invited here today to talk about food safety and how that interfaces with soil health. Should I pass it to you?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Horton. I am the agronomy manager at Taylor Farms. We farm on the Central Coast as well as in the desert. So I'm really glad to be here. It's unusually cold, so I'd appreciate it if you all could make it warmer down here again, get the crops growing. So I look forward to talking to you today, and I hope you have lots of questions for us.
And I'm Matt McGuire. I'm the Chief Ag Officer for J.V. Smith Companies. We have operations between here in the desert, Mexico, right across the border, Salinas and Colorado. I've been around a while, maybe too long in some people's eyes, but I'm here. I want to thank you, everybody, for coming here today. This is a great crowd.
Thanks. And I just want to say that we will have questions at the end. So as we're talking, just keep your questions and we'll give you a chance to ask them at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into questions here. So I'm going to start with Kim. How important is soil health to your operation? And what are some practices that you currently implement to improve soil health? And how are those different than what you would do for a different area like, say, Salinas versus Yuma?
Okay, so the first question. Soil health is extremely important to our operation. Sustainability, of course, is the basis of all farming. If it's not sustainable, we won't be able to continue doing it for the generations to come. Some of the ways that we improve our soil health and monitor it is crop rotation is extremely important to us. We have enough crops, different plant families, where we can rotate year over year and not go back to back on the same fields. We avoid that at all costs. We also use gypsum, compost, other soil amendments where we can work with it. We put those out into the fields to improve our soil health. Down here in the desert, of course, high pH is always an issue. So elemental sulfur and other products like that can help reduce the pH. We do soil monitoring, whether it's in-house. We do soil health testing in-house. We also send stuff out for genomic testing. And then we're monitoring our moisture. We use soil moisture sensors in the field to make sure the ranch managers know exactly how long they need to irrigate for and when to turn it off. So those are the main ways. Now the third question, there was one more.
Yes, how is your approach different between regions?
So before coming to Taylor Farms, I worked in the San Joaquin Valley and down here as well. So I've seen a lot of agriculture in different parts of California. And this area, like Joey just said in all the slides, salt, right? Number one issue we have down here is mitigating salts. So I'm always looking for ways to do that, whether it's using mycorrhizae or some new products that are on the market that help mitigate salts. Gypsum, of course, our standard. Now, here we're using the gypsum for salts. In the Central Coast, I'm using gypsum for high magnesium and to open up soils, make it so that you can work them. The most of the fields we have on the Central Coast have lower pH and higher soil organic matter than the desert fields. But that doesn't mean you can't increase organic matter over time in the desert as well. We have a small farm stand, the Earthbound farm stand in Carmel, and CEC on those soils are 11, and it has 6% organic matter. So it's possible. So those are some of the different ways.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Next, I'd like to ask Matt a question. So what are some unique challenges that you face in your desert operations, and what kind of soil health practices have you successfully implemented?
Whereas Joey and Kim both said salt, 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 and salt are our main problems. If we had less salts, we could use less water. We could use less inputs. Salinas doesn't have that same problem. They do have salts, but they have a great input that we don't have in the desert, and that's called rain. And it takes care of their salt problems. We have to artificially put that water on, and of course then water becomes a risk, particularly when we don't get snowpack and whatnot in the desert. So crop rotation is great, as Kim mentioned. Unfortunately, 65% of our crops or more are lettuces. So we are in a monoculture type environment, but we do get secondary crops of wheat, Sudan. We try to use those in rotation. There has been some work on other crop for the summer that we're starting to play with to both help us reduce salts, increase organic matter, and actually fixate nitrogen in the soil. So those are some of the things we're working on. But when it comes to salts, it's been polymers, it's been surfactants, it's been gypsum, acids. And again, then the whole question is, as you add those to your environment, what's that doing to your soil biology, and are you maintaining a healthy soil? So a lot of those questions have never been answered. We do what feels good. We see if we can get some results on primarily salts, and we can measure that pretty easily.
So what food safety concerns do growers have with soil health products and practices, and what type of practices are you most concerned with as an expert in soil and food safety?
Yeah, don't say soil health.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
definitely not an expert on soil health. How many of you are actually leafy greens growers? Just a few of you that I recognized in the room. So just taking that into account for the audience, if a Yuma grower or desert grower is producing leafy greens, there is a set of standards that are known as the Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement metrics that provide a great deal of information that assists growers in determining how to use these soil health products or composts or soil amendments, whatever you want to call them, safely and to reduce food safety risks. So those metrics will help the grower, and they're also requirements for their shippers that they're working for, will help those growers decide how to select the suppliers of those products. It will help you look at how they run their operations. There are requirements for scientifically validated processes to reduce or eliminate pathogens in those products. There are guidelines for plant back or restrictions for application intervals between when you plant a leafy green crop or actually days to harvest. And there are other entities that provide governance or structure with how to select these products. So your growers are looking at all of these things when they're selecting these products. Are there challenges with that? Yes, there are a lot of new products out there. The biologicals and some of these other products are new. The LGMA nor the Food and Drug Administration, nobody approves these products. You know, you're using this guidance to help you select these products to help you reduce food safety risks. And so that's certainly helpful. But one of the things that Joey mentioned is we have some shippers that are required, because of their end buyer, that they cannot allow composts. They won't allow composts. And that is applied wholesale, meaning you can't cherry pick which fields are going to go to that end buyer. So the shippers will require no compost be used on anything that is producing leafy greens. So that's certainly a challenge to a grower that's trying to maintain soil health, right, with the use of compost, where traditionally, agronomically, that would be something that a grower would do on a periodic basis, cycle that through. The other big food safety concern these days are something that is a huge unknown, and that's the addition of water treatment for overhead irrigation in the last 21 days. That's an LGMA requirement. There's certainly some challenges there because we just do not know. There hasn't been enough research about that impact of those sanitizers on soil health. So I'm hoping that that's something that this particular initiative will encourage that kind of research so that we can learn more about the impact of those sanitizers on soil health.
Thanks, Vicki. And my follow-up question is, how do we manage the trade-off between food safety and soil health?
Well, I think obviously always more information is better, right? So the Desert Ag Soil Health Initiative will certainly generate some research that can be used to maybe change the minds of some of these buyers, or actually give us that science-based information that we need in order to persuade or to encourage people to follow the science and not just work with their own internal business decisions, which we may never be able to influence those.
Thanks, yeah. Kim, well, first of all, is there anything you want to comment on from what you've heard from your other panelists? I want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Well, so I think to add to what Vicki just said, it's science, right? Let's use science to make decisions about food safety, not knee-jerk reactions of what's going on. I mean, there's so much great research going on right now at universities and in the field showing that diversity, biodiversity in the soil, roots in the ground, more plant life suppresses foodborne pathogens. I mean, there's lots and lots of papers out there right now. So getting that information to the right people is really important. So sharing that information with your buyers and educating them and bringing them to the field. I mean, how many people have never stepped foot on a field that they're buying produce from? Probably the vast majority of them. So, bringing those people to the field, showing them what we're doing, showing them the challenges, I think that really goes a long way. We used to do, we would bring whole foods to the farm, have them pack a box of their produce in the field, put their name on it. They would harvest everything, ship it off, and then it would go to their whole food store where they were working. And then they would get their box and open it and see what it looked like. So they knew exactly what they put in it, and then they saw what happens after shipping and everything that the produce goes through. And that was, I think, a real eye-opener for a lot of people, that it's not nuts and bolts, right? It's produce. It's a lot more perishable than a lot of people realize. So, do you have anything to add?
I'll just comment a little bit more on Vicki. I don't think I don't think a lot of people understand just how important food safety is, and it's the paramount overriding factor as we produce food. I had a buyer come in one time, a industry expert, and they said if there's a risk, we don't want to do it. And he's actually right, because his comment was, you can't kill off your customers and think you got a sustainable model. And I think that applies. And so I think as you do research, you might think about those things.
Thanks, Matt. So, yeah, we're here today to bring researchers and industry stakeholders together to discuss these things. And this leads to a good question for Vicki. How do you get researchers engaged with food safety experts, and who are these experts? And at what point in their research should they engage?
They should engage early and often. Research should always speak with industry and other food safety experts early and often so that they can make sure that they're asking the right questions, developing the right research objectives so that they're not chasing something that is not wanted or not needed by industry. I think. Was there a second part to that question?
It was at what point, it's who and at what point.
Oh, who?
In
so
what
we
ways?
got the early and often. So here in the desert, I believe that you have a great industry-wide support for research. Growers like Matt and his company are always willing to jump in and help researchers, and I think that that's something that growers here locally are always willing to do. Our extension agents from the University of Arizona, they are so helpful and have such a wealth of knowledge. You should always speak with them as well as a researcher. And I forget which one of you mentioned that, I think it was you, Kim, the huge body of research that's already out there from the Center for Produce Safety, that if you're new to this type of research, you should take a deep dive into the research that's already out there and been done.
Thanks, Vicki. I'm skipping around here with my original outline, but Kim, what are some experiences that you've had working with researchers and companies, and what kind of advice would you give them about how to best work with industry stakeholders?
So researchers, as far as university, I've had great experiences. I actually went to school in Florida and worked with IFAS there, but not so much as a grower, more as I worked for a biotech company there. And then when I moved to California, working with researchers from the University of California has been amazing. Arizona has been amazing as well. I mean, you just have to reach out. Everyone's willing to help you if you just reach out and talk to them. And then I agree with telling them what we need, because a lot of times people have a theory that they want to prove or a direction they think they're going that's going to help the industry, which maybe it does to an extent. But as growers, if we can really help them say, that's good, but let's also add this facet to it, or, let's go down this path a little bit more, that would be more beneficial to us. For suppliers, there's so many products out there, and we're a production farm. We're not a research farm. So if you come to me with a product, please do your diligence. Know what vegetables we grow. Know what we actually do. They're vegetables. Don't come to us with almond research. It's not the same thing. Or even berries. Berries are very different than vegetables. So doing your diligence, knowing who you're trying to sell the product to, what they do, and then on top of that, think about the benefits of what you can tell them about soil health for their product, the product you're trying to bring to me, and then also how can we trial it on a large scale? Because I can't do a replicated field plot. It's just impossible. Can I do it on 5 acres? Because that makes sense to me. I can have a control, I can have a treated area, and we can actually get real harvest data from that. Because small plot harvest data, you start extrapolating that upward and the numbers can get odd very fast. So those are some of the things I always ask the suppliers. Talk to the researchers first, have that data before you come to me, and then show me for my crops what you can do for me.
Thanks, Kim. Matt, I think I want to ask you the same question, and also, what are some of the red flags for that you see when talking to private companies or university researchers?
That's an easy one.
Well, I'll go to the red flags first. That's easy.
Yeah.
I got something that would fix all your problems.
Oh, yeah.
I can get rid of all the salts. That's usually the salt people. We reduce all the salts. But I would suggest researchers and product managers that they partner up with YCEDA. They know the growers. They know who can do research for them, who can do different things. We've trialed hundreds and hundreds of products on our ranches. And yes, it's hard. I get all kinds of pictures like, look at this, bugs in a jug, and look how much it stimulates root growth. Well, I don't know how many of you guys have taken a salad lately, but in your salads you don't see the roots of lettuce. I don't sell roots of lettuce. I sell what's above the ground. It has to, any product or anything we use has to translate into a meaningful yield improvement, water savings, nitrogen savings. And you got to remember, we're at risk. I get guys kind of, I got this product, save you 20% fertilizer. Put it on, cut your fertilizer 20%. That's great. But if it doesn't make, they're giving me a $30 worth an acre of product, and I'm risking a $5,000 acre crop. And my partners in the industry won't put up with that failure. We're judged every day, every year on what our cost per acre is, our yields and our cost per units are judged over long term. And I fight every year with our Salinas partners over $20 an acre. So any input I put on, I really have to make sure it's working.
Vicki, unless you'd like to, any follow-up there?
Well, I'd say, I think Matt said it well. When someone comes to me and it's going to solve all my problems, that's a little too broad brush for me. Another thing that always kind of puts me on edge is when I ask them what's in the product and they say it's proprietary. That's another kind of red flag to me, just because, like Matt said, we need to know what we're putting out in our field. We can't just believe that whatever's in there is what, if you can't tell me what's in there, that makes me a bit nervous.
Yeah, I've had some experience working with some of these companies, and if you can't give me a little bit of an idea what's in there, then maybe you don't really know, and also if they haven't already done some of their own trials or had independent trials, third-party trials already completed, then that's a red flag. If you don't have the money to do a couple trials on your own, Vicki, I'd like to hear about advice you might have to give a company or a researcher wanting to test out a product, food safety-wise.
Well, I think what Kim and Matt mentioned about some of these products where they don't want to discuss the ingredients. Absolutely, from a food safety standpoint, and whether you're trying to meet metrics within the LGMA or some other third-party requirements or even your customer requirements, you don't necessarily need to know the ingredient list, but those products have to have gone through a scientifically validated process, whether that's a chemical process, a biological process, a heat-treated process, to prove that they are pathogen-free or have met the Food and Drug Administration's rules for pathogen reduction. So those pathogens are Salmonella, Listeria, E. coli 0157. Those are the pathogens of human health concern that we look at for leafy greens production. So those products absolutely have to have some proof or some evidence of that if you're going to use them from a food safety standpoint.
So you mentioned earlier there's some food safety or water treatments water treatment products that could be detrimental to soil health, what kind of recommendations, and this is for all of you, like what are your concerns with that? What kind of recommendations would you have when people are developing products for that?
It's at this point in time, the Food and Drug Administration and the EPA more or less get involved in the labels for these sanitizers that are used. Originally, these sanitizers were developed mainly for control of fungal pathogens on plants, and now we're using them for water treatment. So you have to have labels that actually cover water treatment. And the Food and Drug Administration, in their proposed Ag Water Rule, is now looking for those water treatments to have pathogen efficacy. And some of those products are undergoing those tests. Dr. Rock is involved in that. But these products have to undergo a similar process in order to have appropriate labeling. And you have to use chemistries or products that are labeled for their intended use. So I think if they're, right now I don't know of any new sort of sanitizers that are out there being developed for water treatment. It's the standard tried and true products that are maybe chlorine based or peroxyacetic acid based. We haven't seen any new ones out there yet. There may be other types of water treatment that are being used, but those are the two main chemistries that we see here.
I think Vicki really covered that topic quite well. I don't know if I have anything
That's
else
fine.
to
I just
add.
wanted an opportunity
Yeah.
for comments on those type of treatments.
Well, I think water treatments can be dangerous. They're dangerous for the personnel. We have different chlorine products that can really be problematic for workers. We have others. There's really, really strong oxidizers. I know ourselves, we've shied away from those, and we've gone to UV light systems that Dr. Rock verified to meet LGMA requirements. And that all came from the fact that we were using chlorine, and I had a field of spinach, and half the field got chlorine and the other half didn't. Well, the secondary crop was Sudan, and the half of the field, exactly the same, small field, 17-acre field, the half that had no chlorine grew a crop, and the side that had chlorine on it grew no crop. It never got over 3 inches tall, right to the line. And so we can severely impact soil health with some of these food safety measures if we're not careful. And I think we do have to be careful using some of these chemical products.
Thanks, Matt. And you can keep the microphone. I have another question for you. And this is for all of the panelists. Is there any research or new products or technologies for assessing or enhancing soil health that you are excited about?
I think some of the stuff Joey's doing and some of the testing he's doing, particularly when it's concerning some of the cover crops we're using, is very exciting for the desert. Again, there's certain inputs we can put on, but again, how does it impact? What does it cost? Where can we use it without using more water? So we're actually experimenting with some summer crops that we can plant on our summer floods and use that water that's leaching salt, but at the same time grow a cover crop with that water to enhance soil biology, keep it alive in the summertime when the soils down here reach 100 degrees and the ambient temperatures are 115, 120. And we know from testing that our soil biology dies off severely in the summertime. So can we plant some of these summer cover crops to keep that soil alive, get some more carbon, some more green matter into the soil, fixate some nitrogen? So I find those things really exciting because it doesn't add much to the financial inputs to the system, and it uses water we're already using versus having to grow a whole separate cover crop or add more water to affect salts or those type of things. So we have to we're looking at some of those things. I find them exciting.
I think the most exciting thing for soil health is the genomic testing that's being developed now. It's been around for years, but I feel like it's getting better and better. And the fact that companies are able to separate microbes into functional groups, even though they haven't necessarily been named yet, is exciting, because whenever I think about soil and the billions and billions of microbes that are in a single thimbleful of it, the ability to separate the functional groups with not knowing every single genus is what I'm really excited about. And then how we can use that to improve growing, right? Because my whole goal is to grow the healthiest crops possible, because those are going to give us the best yield, the best nutrients, and they're going to be the best for the soil over time. So I think that's my number one exciting genomic testing of the soil, because there's so much more to learn about the soil, right? I mean, how many people are studying soil microbes? You don't hear it very often. So
I'm easily excitable, those of you that know me. And I really get excited about research. And to add on to what Matt and Kim said, one of the things that's really important is practicality of it. So although we can study microbiomes right now, and they are very interesting, at what point can we use that through modeling or artificial intelligence to have some sort of predictability about crop success? Especially maybe very important with some of these water treatment chemicals. At what point have we reached a point where recovery of the soil is going to take longer or need some sort of amendments once these products have been used on it long term? And, can those microbiome sorts of tests help us understand, what we need to add to it? And so Joey and the Dashi group, the things that they're looking at, what are those soil indicators that we need to know? So microbiome is a test, but are there other things that we can learn immediately to make things more practical for the grower so they can have solutions to amend the soil rapidly for their next crop?
So how do we get farmers to embrace practices to improve soil health?
I don't think they need much encouragement. Healthy soil, healthy plants, right, and greater yields, and over time, it's that 100 years. Farming has to be sustainable. So I don't think they need much encouragement, but they do need practical sorts of solutions and practical tests and measurements that they can do on their own, or more simply with an agronomist or a crop consultant that can help them understand that.
I think one of the great benefits that you can always show a farmer is how it makes their lives easier, right? That's one of the best ways to get a ranch manager to implement a practice. So when you put, let's say, cover crops out in a field, you're going to get better water infiltration. By getting better water infiltration, you're going to have looser soil. Having a looser soil, you're going to be able to prep the ground easier and faster for the crop after the cover crop. So that's what you do. You show them how using these practices are going to make farming slightly easier. Not that it's going to solve every problem, but the whole farming's hard enough as is, and as soon as you're going to introduce something new, it's like, this is why we want you to do it. It's not just because I think it's a good idea. It's because it's going to make things easier in the long run and improve them. And they'll see it. As soon as you have someone embrace that kind of practice, they're going to say to everyone, hey, this soil was way easier to work after my cover crop than it was when I leave it fallow for 3 months. And then that expands because everybody talks. Everybody looks over everybody's shoulders. What's going on in that field? What's this person doing? So you can really get a good synergy going when you show the improvement with these practices. Everything I said at the beginning, crop rotation, amendments, cover crops, all of those things.
I think farmers over years have been very adaptable, and they have to. It's getting warmer. We get less water. We have to produce bigger crops. We have to keep the cost down for the consumers. So I think it's an easy sell. If there's research out there that shows how to do it easier, better, and produce a better crop, then the farmers will adapt it. I'm with Kim on this one. It doesn't take much. You come out, farmers they might know their fields better than the kids. I mean, they name them, that's George out there, he's a big one. Let's figure out how to duplicate him. But they go and look. So if they can see the physical difference, they will adapt really quick. And they see the payback. They know what the payback is.
So, Kim, you mentioned the shippers and the buyers. So what about the consumers? How does the consumer demand for sustainability affect decision-making on the farm?
So consumers, of course, who are buying what we're doing, but their understanding of what happens on a farm is just minuscule. I mean, that's just all there's to it. That's been one of the great things about COVID, is everyone having gardens at their house and failing. Right? I cannot tell you how many friends and family have come to me and said, gosh, I tried to grow a couple tomato plants and they died, and I didn't know what was wrong, and so I think that's been wonderful to show them. When you look out at a field and you see acres and acres of a perfect crop, how hard that is to do and how well farmers do it. And so I think that's what it's all about. It's getting people involved, getting the education into schools, having garden programs at schools, doing things. The younger generations are the ones that are driving what people are buying now. Sustainability is very high on the list of what they want to see. So show them, tell them, scream it from the rooftops what you're doing to improve soil health and be more sustainable, with the caveat that it takes time. None of this happens overnight. And I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is the metrics and the testing. They want to see change so quickly. And soils don't do that. They change over years. And I think that's another thing we have to tell our consumers, is we're making changes for the long term. And the numbers will show it in time, but it's not going to be next season.
Matt, would you like to add to that?
Sustainability is important. Farmers in general are sustainable, but we're really lousy storytellers. And what we do with water, I mean, you hear about, we're shipping alfalfa overseas, or we're doing this, or we're doing that, and we're spraying, and we're destroying the environment. So hopefully we can become better storytellers through different venues. But I'm with Kim. I think one of the biggest impacts I've seen in telling our stories is our school garden program. We do sponsor a couple schools. We provide them with the expertise, and we make the parents and the kids come out. So when it's planting day, they come out, and you give them a lettuce seed to plant. They're like, yeah, but where's the lettuce? Well, it comes from that. Well, how's it come from that? The tiny thing, big head of lettuce. They have no clue. And that's locally. That's people going out and they see ag all around them. And so, getting those type of educational programs in schools across the nation would go a long ways to getting people to eat healthier, eat more of our products, and understand how sustainable we've been in the past and what we're doing for the future.
Vicki, I have the same question for you, but I want to add to that. How do you balance the demand for zero risk, for food safety?
Oh boy. And she gave us the questions ahead of time, and I was kind of hoping it would come to me. Sustainability, just in general, has kind of ebbed and flowed. It's been in a cycle during my lifetime with its popularity, and I think more recently we have some actual measurement tools, and there's some things that we can actually name as what we consider to be sustainable sorts of practices. And so that's a measurable thing, and unfortunately we have so many people that are very far removed from farms now. You know, it was just a few generations ago where they had a relative or a family member that owned a farm and produced things on a farm. So it's a big challenge to speak to those consumers in languages that they can understand. Is like Matt and Kim have said, you know, school gardens are helping, but when they don't even realize that the plant comes from a seed, we got big problems, right? And so they definitely have not made a connection between what it takes to produce that crop and produce it safely from a food safety standpoint. The CDC tells us that 1 in 6 people in the United States is going to get sick from a foodborne illness every year right now. That's what the statistics tell us. So it doesn't mean that they're dying from that, but 1 in 6 of you are going to experience a foodborne illness this year sometime. Okay. Does it necessarily come from the crops that we produce? No, but there are other ways to transmit these things. But to make that connection between sustainable practices and zero risk or zero tolerance, the Food and Drug Administration is chasing that, right? And us farmers, we're chasing that too. We see that from our shippers and our buyers trying to drive that number down to 0. You know, so that 1 in 6 statistic is not acceptable to the Food and Drug Administration and to the CDC, but is the actual consumer, I don't know that they're making that connection yet, but we certainly are. And that's why food safety is pretty much number 1 on our farms. It's got to be everything to us when we're deciding what our practices are going to be. So we're intent on driving that number to 0. Is it ever going to be 0? Are we ever going to eliminate all the risk? No. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but it's pretty nebulous.
If you didn't answer my question, I like what you said. So before we move into some audience questions, I want to give you an opportunity to share some final thoughts, suggestions on what members of the audience can do to help the process of improving soil health and bringing new solutions to soil health. Anything you think you'd like to communicate?
I think researchers have to know we're looking for solutions, and they have to be measurable. And soil health, you know, we can define soil health, we can give measurements, but again, it has to produce something in the end crop or the end financial inputs. Soil health for soil health's sake is not a goal. The goal is soil health to produce a better crop, use less inputs, and keep producing healthy, nutritious food, safe food for the consumer out there. That's what the bottom line is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Matt's statement, and as Vicki said, of course, food safety is our number 1 priority. So melding all of that together, food safety plus sustainability plus highest yields and healthiest crops. Figuring out, $20, that's what happens when your cell phone goes off in my panel. Bring it up.
Okay, Mike, over there.
It used to be more. But yeah, just solving a problem. That's what I think is great. When I have a company come to me, if let's say they have a product they want to present to me, and they say, what's your biggest issue on the farm? What's your biggest disease? What's your biggest pest? What's your biggest nutrient deficiency? when they come to me and ask that question first and then provide me with, this is what product we have that can help you do that, that just saves me time and energy than going through their, it's great you have 25 different products, but I have to sit there and go through every one of them and figure out which one's going to fit my need. And that's the same thing for the genomics question, the soil microbes. You know, I agree, it gives you so much information, but there's no sense in running that test unless you have a question in mind. Do you have a fungal pathogen in the soil that you're trying to suppress? Excuse me. And you want to know what beneficial functional groups you have in the soil to suppress that pathogen. You know, all of this testing, you need to have a question in mind while you're doing it.
It's a dang miracle, isn't it? What we produce here in the desert, when you realize all the moving parts, and now you're throwing in sustainability. You need to consider soil health. I love Joey's word, holistically. When you think about producing what we produce here, you really have to look at it from the big picture, from that holistic standpoint. And you can't ignore soil. You can't ignore food safety. There's really nothing that can be ignored in order to get this crop to where people need it. It's absolutely imperative that we do that for our nation's food security and health. So hats off to all of you that do this on a daily basis.
So we have a few minutes for questions.
It's me. Hi, guys. So Chandler Rock, University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. One of the challenges that we face, so we do a lot of ag water treatment, so you heard them talk about that a bit and the work that we've been doing for that. And then we also heard loud and clear, right, which we mentioned a couple times about the impact of water treatment on soil health, soil microbial communities. So we've been working on that, right, for the last 4 or 5 years. The challenge, however, is that most of our funding agencies are 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. So we can get at answers for short-term impacts. We have huge challenges on trying to build projects that can be longer term so that we can understand the longer term impacts, which is the questions that you guys need answers for. So I looked to Stephanie with YCEDA and Joey with DASHE and industry to figure out what can we build some longer term funding mechanisms to sustain research like that can really get at the heart of the questions that you guys are answering. Because we can do the short term stuff, but that's not really your goals and kind of what you need.
Thank goodness there wasn't a question in there.
Funding's easy. Mike just contributed the first $20 with his cell phone going out.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Johnny.
Do you see a disconnect in research when you're looking at soil health and not looking at it as a whole microcosm? Like, kind of like and I know my food safety people, we're trying to have everything clean for food safety, but they're missing the big point that, soil is its own microcosm. Like, it would be the equivalent of saying, well, the ocean's just a body of water.
I can address that on a couple of issues, like biological companies. I'll get biological companies, and they got the bugs in the jug, and they'll show me petri dish after petri dish of how it repels something I want to get rid of or eats something I want to get rid of, and they got 2 organisms in there. They got the one they want to fix and get rid of, and they got the one that's going to do the job. The trouble is, we throw it in the soil, and like Kim said, there's billions of microbes in a tablespoon of soil. And here, they expect to give me a bugs in a jug that they show me the petri dish works, and now I'm throwing it in against trillions and trillions of colony-forming units in the area that my root zone is. They better show me a little bit more than that than a petri dish. It works, and all those things go. We put acid on the fields to reduce salts. What does that do to my biology in the soil? We put chlorine on. What does that do to it? Am I enhancing it or hurting it? So yes, when researchers look at their solutions, they have to look at the soil as a whole. It's great in a lab, but the lab's a whole lot different than coming out to soils where there is many complex interactions going on.
So if you ask PCA, they would probably disagree with you, but I believe part of the position is to evaluate the soil. So my question is, what do you think outside of soil testing and making recommendations for nutrients, do you think that a PCA can provide to promote soil health? Because they're selling the products as well, so they can provide other services to promote those.
Well, I am a PCA, and I would say, I mean, when I'm looking at fields, I'm always looking at below ground as well as above ground, because what goes on below ground is affecting what's going on above ground. And, you know, products with carbon, that's always a good start to improve your soil health. You got to feed those microbes. And so I think if as a PCA, if you're not looking at both areas, then you're doing a disservice to your grower. Yeah.
Do you think there's a certain service that they could be providing, like nutrient stations can be promoting something more on soil health? I'm just looking for maybe a missing component, because I think that your PCA and IPM is really critical to promote soil health.
Sure. So, I mean, I think with the SPM roadmap that's coming out in California, this has been a big topic of discussion. And the idea of not being a pest control advisor, being a pest, they came up with a different acronym, pest, I'm trying to remember it from the bulletin, but essentially it's not just about pests. It's looking at all of it together. So, you know, letting a grower know, like I know when I walk fields, I'm like, hey, this field's really tight and we're not going to get good infiltration here. Let's put out some humic acid. Or this one has a lot of salts coming up. You know, you had to do a short irrigation or maybe it rained. Let's put out a product to try to mitigate that. But then I know as a CCA, I always look at my soils beforehand as well to troubleshoot ahead of time. You know, we look at every single lot and go through the soil tests that we've taken and know which crop's going onto that lot, and then say beforehand, hey, we might need to give this one a little extra attention because it's Little George instead of Big George.
Joey, add that to the list, outreach to PCAs and CCAs so that they understand what DASHE's all about and how we're going to need their help. Thanks for that question, Macy.
So
one more question.
okay, one more question. We're cutting into our break, but that's okay.
I think it'll be a quick question. I'm an undergrad student, and my question is for Mr. McGuire. You really caught my attention when you were talking about experimenting with summer crops to add organic matter and decrease salts. And really, I'd just love if you tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what are you trying? Are you doing it in conjunction with any researchers? How's it working out for you?
We're working with Joey on summer crops, and actually Kurt Nolte, who used to be with Ag Extension, wrote a paper, I don't remember the year, it's available at the Ag. And so he identified a number of crops would actually grow in our summer. Sun hemp, sedan, lab, which is a bean. And the one we're high on is a Suspania. Actually, if you look back in the history, back in the 1920s and 30s, there was a lot of Suspania grown, particularly over in Imperial Valley, for fiber and as a cover crop, because it does fixate nitrogen, and it depending how tall you want to grow it, you can add a lot of organic matter to the soil, and it really does not do well unless it's hot. We can't even plant it and get a germ usually until late May and June, so it works perfect in our crop rotation to use as a summer flood leaching crop to put in the same time we're doing summer floods.
So at this point, I'd like to thank my panelists for that really great discussion, and I hope that the discussion continues into our break. So can you join me in thanking them.